Should you tip your Uber or Lyft driver? Should you tip the Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub delivery folks? This comes up a lot because it's not uncommon for customers to suggest that, well, we've paid for the food or we've paid for the trip, and that is our obligation. We've met our obligation, so you shouldn't expect a tip as a driver or as a food delivery person, which is true. And the response in regards to anyone asking, are you obligated to tip a driver, or are you obligated to tip a food delivery person? The answer is an emphatic no. You are not obligated to tip anyone. Hell, even in the restaurant business, you're not obligated to tip your server. However, there can be consequences if you decide not to tip. And there's a lot of passengers in ridesharing that routinely do not tip the drivers. Well, the obvious consequences could be you not having drivers in your area that are eager to serve you. There's a lot of areas throughout the United States where it takes a while to get a driver. In the food business, it can be even more pronounced because, let's face it, as a rideshare driver myself, and many other drivers will tell you, we memorize the folks that we serve. If we're delivering food to your house, we remember the house we went to. So next time we see your address pop up and we know that you don't tip, we're going to avoid coming to deliver food to you or coming to pick you up for a trip. You don't have to tip us. We don't have to serve you. It is as simple as that. Very similar to the restaurant business. Now, in the ride-sharing business, if you're in a big market like Chicago or something of that nature, there's a hell of a lot of drivers out there. So you're likely to find someone that has never dealt with you before. So if you don't tip, you just can continue to rotate and cycle new drivers after new drivers. But if you're in a smaller market, smaller town, and people start knowing who the hell you are, yeah, you may start finding it difficult to get people to come pick you up. Yours truly, yeah, if I know you do not tip, it does make me hesitant to serve you again. Now, in ridesharing, there's only about 30% of passengers that tip. Some drivers report it even being less. But here's why tips mean so much to us drivers. Although the ride-sharing companies do not make this clear to the passengers or the customers, our experience with tipping is very similar to the restaurant business or the bartending business. We don't make a lot in terms of base salary. Whatever you pay to the ride-sharing companies for your trip, the driver is getting about a third of that. I'm talking a significant cut is going to Uber or Lyft. So if you pay $10 to get from point A to point B, that driver could be making as low as $3 or $4 for that trip. A lot of passengers do not even realize that because Uber and Lyft do not want you to know how much they're taking from the drivers on these trips. But I assure you, and if you don't believe me, just simply ask the driver next time you are in a ride-sharing vehicle. You can tell the driver how much you paid for the trip, and at the completion of the trip, the driver is advised how much he or she earned. I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, any driver out there will happily show you their smartphone, their device, to confirm what I am saying, which is a large portion of the fare is taken by the ride-sharing companies, talking about Uber and Lyft. And the same applies in the food delivery business. I mean, most of the work that we do pays well under $10. Most of the trips we take in most markets is paying the driver less than $10. Most of the trips you take as a passenger is paying much more than $10. So there you go. But like I said, you don't have to trust yours truly. You can ask the passenger, or you can ask the drivers to show you their smartphones, and I would submit to you that the overwhelming majority of them will have no problem, because this is something we kind of want you to know. Now, no one should tip just for the sake of it. the driver should give you a decent experience. A clean vehicle, get you to point A, get you from point A to point B expeditiously. You don't beat around the bush and waste time. You know, car should smell okay. Shouldn't be smelling like anything that's unsavory. And for the most part, that is our service to you. Now, good conversation, maybe having phone chargers and things like that, certainly can step things up. But there are some passengers that it doesn't matter what the hell you do, they're not going to leave one damn cent. And what ends up happening also, as I pointed out, consequences for not tipping is that it can be discouraging to drivers. If you go above and beyond as a driver, let's say you pull somebody up to the airport and you help them with several bags out of the trunk, or you pick up someone at a grocery store and you help them load a bunch of grocery bags into the car, and that person does not tip you anything at all, it can literally remove your motivation to do that same amount of extra work for the next passenger. And as I just stated, with 30% or so of the passengers tipping, that alone can explain a hell of a lot, because it's not uncommon to get passengers who state, well, the driver didn't do anything for me, or they pulled up and would not get out and help me with my bags and things like that. It's behavior like that that can lead to that. I would submit to you that any driver would have absolutely no problem getting out and helping you with your bags, luggage, groceries, whatever, if they felt fairly assured you were going to give them a tip, even if it's $2 or $3. But there are a number of passengers that do not do that. As I stated before, with only 30% of the passengers tipping, that means the overwhelming majority of folks do not tip. And there have been studies to suggest that only 1% of rideshare passengers suggest that they tip on every trip. And like I said, about 70% of them do not tip on most trips. So you don't have to tip your driver. I just want to make that clear. You do not have to tip your driver. Just understand it means a lot to them if you do. And it could have two benefits to you as a passenger. One is obviously the incentive to provide much better service. And two is the incentive to service you to begin with. There are whole neighborhoods in this country, and any of my veteran drivers in the comments can back your boy up on this. Whole neighborhoods where you feel confident that neighborhood is loaded with non-tippers. The end result is obvious. A lot of us drivers don't want to go to that neighborhood. If you live in a neighborhood where most of the passengers in your neighborhood do not tip, it's going to be a good chance you have a hard time getting drivers to come to your neighborhood. Same applies with food delivery. We work for tips. I don't know how to explain that any better, but unfortunately a lot of customers do not know that. Let me know in the comments, if you are a passenger, do you often tip? Is there a certain amount? Maybe some folks go with 10, 20% of the fare, and then some folks, well, I just give the driver a couple of dollars. I would tell you this before wrapping the video up. Even if you tip $1 single, there is a chance that if every passenger tipped $1 single, the driver would earn more in tips than with the occasional passenger tipping $5 or so. Simply put, there are just simply that many passengers that do not tip at all. That getting $1 from every individual would actually end up being more. Most of us drivers, the full-time drivers, you're probably doing average of 3 trips or so per hour. If you're out here for 8 hours a day or more, you could easily be talking about 25 to 30 trips. A lot of drivers, a hell of a lot of drivers, can drive an 8-hour day, do 30 trips, and do not receive $30 in tips combined from all 30 of those trips. That certainly can happen. Veteran drivers in the comments, if you do a full days of trips, how many trips can you average in 8 hours? And what would be your average amount of tips you were likely to receive in the course of 8 hours? Love to see it in the comments. As always, folks, subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.